Most people stumble through life wondering why they keep losing battles. They didn't even know they were fighting. They work hard, play fair, and trust easily, then feel shocked when the world doesn't reward their innocence. They believe in karma, fairness, and the idea that good things come to those who wait. Meanwhile, others who understand the invisible rules of power move past them effortlessly, taking opportunities, building influence, and shaping outcomes, while the naive sit confused, asking what went wrong. Here's what nobody wants to tell you. The world operates on a hidden set of principles that have nothing to do with what you were taught in school or what sounds nice in motivational quotes. These principles don't care about your intentions. They don't reward virtue for virtue's sake. They simply exist, cold and consistent, shaping every interaction, every negotiation, every relationship, and every power dynamic you'll ever encounter. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the dark power lessons that Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Lessons that remain as relevant today as they were in Renaissance Italy. These aren't theories. They're observations about how human nature actually functions when you strip away the comforting stories we tell ourselves. By the end of this, you'll see the game clearly. And once you see it, nothing can defeat you because you'll finally understand what you're actually playing. Before we begin, type this in the comments to anchor this mindset. I see the game and I play to win. Let's start with the most uncomfortable truth. The world you live in is not governed by fairness. It's governed by perception, leverage, and strategic action. Every single day, people around you are making calculated moves. They're managing how they appear, controlling what they reveal, testing boundaries, and positioning themselves for advantage. Most do this unconsciously. Some do it with full awareness. But whether intentional or not, the game is always being played. You were probably taught that if you work hard enough, stay honest, and treat people well, success will naturally follow. That's a beautiful idea. It's also dangerously incomplete. Hard work without strategy makes you useful to others, not powerful. Honesty without discretion makes you predictable and easy to exploit. Treating everyone well without discernment turns you into a resource that people drain without reciprocation. Machiavelli saw this clearly. He watched rulers rise and fall. He observed which behaviors led to power and which led to destruction. What he discovered wasn't a moral framework. It was an operational manual for reality. He wasn't interested in how the world should work. He was interested in how it does work. And what he found was that the leaders who survived weren't necessarily the most virtuous. They were the most adaptable, the most strategically aware, and the most willing to act on reality rather than wishful thinking. This doesn't mean you have to become cruel or dishonest. It means you need to become conscious. You need to see beneath the surface of social interactions and understand the mechanics of influence, compliance, and control. Because if you don't understand these mechanics, you'll be subject to them. You'll be the person who gets manipulated, overlooked, and outmaneuvered while wondering why your good heart wasn't enough. Think about someone in your life who always seems to get what they want. Not through aggression or obvious manipulation, but through a kind of quiet influence. They know when to speak and when to stay silent. They understand how to frame requests so people feel good about saying yes. They recognize power dynamics instinctively and position themselves accordingly. That person isn't lucky. They're literate in a language you were never taught, the language of power. Now, let me show you the core lessons that will make you fluent in that language. The first principle is this: people are driven by self-interest, not by the story they tell about themselves. Everyone, including you, operates primarily from their own needs, fears, and desires. This isn't cynicism, it's accuracy. The kindest person you know still makes decisions based on what feels right, safe, or beneficial to them. They might frame it as altruism, but beneath that frame is always a personal motivation. Maybe helping others makes them feel valuable. Maybe generosity protects them from guilt. Maybe loyalty is their strategy for long-term security. Understanding this changes everything. When you accept that people act from self-interest, you stop being shocked by betrayal. You stop taking rejection personally. You start asking better questions. Not why did they hurt me, but what did they gain? Not why don't they appreciate me, but what value am I actually providing them? This shift in perspective is what separates the perpetually confused from the strategically aware. Machiavelli would tell you to watch what people do, not what they say. Words are cheap. They're often designed to manage your perception, to keep you calm, compliant, or confused. Actions reveal truth. Someone who constantly talks about loyalty but disappears when you need them is showing you their real priority, which is convenience. Someone who praises you in person but undermines you behind closed doors is showing you that their self-interest includes your diminishment. Once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. You'll notice how people adjust their behavior based on who has power in the room. You catch the subtle ways they test your boundaries to see what they can get away with. You'll observe how quickly alliances shift when circumstances change, and instead of feeling disillusioned, you'll feel awake, because now you're reading the room at the level where decisions actually get made. Here's how you use this. Stop expecting people to operate from your moral framework. Instead, identify their incentives. What do they want? What do they fear? What do they need to protect? When you understand someone's self-interest, you can predict their behavior. You can position your proposals in ways that align with their goals. You can protect yourself from those whose interests conflict with yours. And you can build alliances with those whose success genuinely requires your success. This isn't manipulation, it's navigation. You're simply choosing to see the currents beneath the surface so you can move through them intelligently instead of being swept away. Type this in the comments. I see through people's words to their true incentives. The second principle is about emotional control. Your emotions are information, but they're terrible decision makers. In any competitive environment, the person who loses their composure first loses the advantage. When you react emotionally, you broadcast exactly where you're vulnerable. You show people which buttons to push, which threats work, and which rewards you'll chase without thinking. Machiavelli understood that appearing calm and controlled is a form of power in itself. When others are panicking, the one who stays composed becomes the anchor. When conflict erupts, the one who doesn't take the bait controls the frame. When insults fly, the one who remains unfazed demonstrates a kind of strength that words can't fake. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions until you explode. It means creating a gap between stimulus and response. Something happens. You feel the anger, the fear, the hurt. But instead of immediately reacting, you pause. In that pause, you choose. Do I respond from emotion or from strategy? Do I give them the reaction they're fishing for, or do I stay 3 steps ahead? Most people are puppets to their own feelings. They get provoked and respond predictably. They get flattered and drop their guard. They get criticized and scramble to defend themselves. Each reaction leaks information. Each outburst hands power to whoever triggered it. The person who masters their emotional responses becomes very difficult to control because you can't reliably predict what will make them break. Practice this starting today. When someone tries to provoke you, notice the urge to react. Then choose silence, or choose a calm deflection, or choose a response so measured it unsettles them. When someone criticizes you, resist the reflex to justify yourself. Instead, consider whether the criticism has merit. If it does, use it. If it doesn't, discard it without drama. Over time, this discipline completely changes how people treat you. They stop testing you because you don't give them the emotional payoff they're seeking. They start treating your words more seriously because you're not someone who speaks from reactive emotion. They begin to respect your boundaries because you enforce them without anger or explanation. Your emotional control becomes a reputation, and that reputation becomes a form of protection that works even when you're not in the room. Type this in the comments. I control my emotions, so they never control me. The third principle is the strategic use of silence and mystery. Most people talk too much. They over-explain their decisions, reveal their plans prematurely, and share their vulnerabilities with people who haven't earned that trust. They think transparency builds connection. Sometimes it does, but more often it just gives others a detailed map of how to predict, manipulate, or undermine you. Machiavelli knew that power grows in the space between what people see and what they understand. When you're completely readable, you're manageable. When you're somewhat mysterious, you're respected. People can't easily dismiss what they don't fully understand. They can't attack positions you haven't revealed. They can't block moves they didn't see coming. This doesn't mean being dishonest or fake. It means being selective. You share what serves your goals and protects what doesn't need to be public. You answer questions without giving away your entire thought process. You let people make assumptions while you stay several steps ahead of their conclusions. Silence, specifically, is one of the most underrated tools in power dynamics. When you stay quiet, others fill the void. They talk more, reveal more, expose their own agendas while you gather information. When you don't rush to defend yourself, people start questioning their own accusations. When you don't immediately respond to every provocation, you force others to wonder what you're thinking, and that uncertainty works in your favor. The person who speaks first in a negotiation often loses ground. The person who explains themselves excessively appears weak. The person who broadcasts every plan invites interference. But the person who listens more than they speak, who reveals only what's necessary, and who moves quietly until the moment of action, that person operates with a level of strategic sophistication that most never develop. Start practicing selective disclosure. When someone asks about your plans, give them the version that protects your position. When someone probes for your weaknesses, redirect without being obvious. When you're in a group, speak less and observe more. Watch who talks to impress, who talks to gather information, and who stays quiet because they're already 3 moves ahead. As you do this, you'll notice a shift. People start paying more attention when you do speak. Your words carry more weight because they're not diluted by constant chatter. Your presence becomes more magnetic because you're not desperately seeking validation through oversharing. Mystery isn't about being cold. It's about being intentional with your energy and your information. It's about understanding that not everyone deserves access to your inner world, and that protecting that world is a sign of strength, not insecurity. Type this in the comments. My silence is my strategy, and my mystery is my shield. The 4th principle involves understanding and using leverage. Power isn't abstract. It's always based on something tangible. Resources, information, relationships, skills, reputation, or simply the ability to walk away. Whoever has more options has more power. Whoever needs the outcome less controls the negotiation. Machiavelli observed that princes who depended entirely on others for their security were vulnerable. The same applies to you. If your income depends on one employer, that employer has leverage over you. If your self-worth depends on one relationship, that person has leverage over you. If your reputation depends on one community, that community has leverage over you. Dependence is the opposite of power. The solution isn't isolation, it's diversification. Build multiple income streams so no single source can control you. Develop skills that are valuable across different contexts so you're not trapped in one role. Cultivate relationships across different circles so you're not socially dependent on any single group. Strengthen your internal sense of worth so external validation becomes nice to have, not necessary to function. This is what detachment actually means in a strategic sense. Not that you stop caring, but that you stop being desperate. Desperation makes you easy to exploit. When someone knows you can't afford to lose them, they can push boundaries, make unreasonable demands, and treat you poorly because they've correctly assessed that you'll tolerate it. But when you have options, everything changes. You can negotiate from a position of strength. You can set boundaries and actually enforce them. You can walk away from situations that don't serve you, not out of spite, but out of simple strategic clarity. Building leverage takes time and discipline. It means saving money when you'd rather spend it, so you have a buffer that buys you choices. It means developing competence even when it's uncomfortable, so you become difficult to replace. It means maintaining relationships even when you don't immediately need them, so you have a network when circumstances shift. The people who seem to effortlessly command respect aren't necessarily more talented. They're often just less desperate. They've built enough options that they can afford to be selective. They can say no without anxiety. They can set terms instead of just accepting them. They can leave tables where they're not valued because they know other tables exist. Start building your leverage today. What skills could you develop that would make you more valuable? What relationships could you nurture that would expand your opportunities? What dependencies could you reduce that would give you more freedom? Every small step toward greater optionality is a step toward greater power. Type this in the comments. I build options so I never negotiate from desperation. The 5th principle is about reputation and perception. Machiavelli famously wrote that it's more important to appear virtuous than to be virtuous, which sounds cynical until you understand what he actually meant. He wasn't saying virtue doesn't matter. He was saying that in the realm of power, perception often matters more than reality because most people judge based on appearances, not deep investigation. Your reputation is the story people tell about you when you're not there. It precedes you into rooms you haven't entered. It influences opportunities you never hear about. It determines who trusts you, who fears you, who wants to work with you, and who wants to undermine you. And here's the critical part. Your reputation is only partially based on who you actually are. It's mostly based on what people consistently observe and what others say about you. This means you can be incredibly competent, but if you don't manage how that competence is perceived, you won't get credit for it. You can be trustworthy, but if you don't demonstrate that trust in visible ways, people won't believe it. You can have good intentions, but if your actions create different impressions, your intentions become irrelevant. Strategic people understand this and act accordingly. They don't just do good work. They make sure the right people know about it. They don't just keep promises privately. They keep them in ways that build public credibility. They don't just avoid scandals. They actively cultivate an image that makes scandals less believable if someone tries to create them. This isn't about being fake. It's about being deliberate. You decide what you want to be known for. Then you consistently act in ways that reinforce that identity. If you want to be known as reliable, you show up on time, every time, especially when it's difficult. If you want to be known as strategic, you speak less and make your words count when you do. If you want to be known as formidable, you set boundaries calmly and enforce them without exception. Over time, these consistent actions build a reputation that becomes self-reinforcing. People start describing you in the terms you've deliberately cultivated. Opportunities align with the identity you've constructed. And when challenges come, your established reputation provides a buffer that protects you from casual attacks. But here's the darker side that Machiavelli also understood. Reputation can be weaponized. If you understand how perception works, you can shape how others are perceived too. A well-placed doubt, a strategic silence when someone expects your defense, a pattern of small observations that build into a narrative. These can alter someone's reputation without you ever directly attacking them. I'm not suggesting you do this casually or maliciously, but you need to understand that others might do it to you, which means protecting your reputation isn't optional, it's essential. You do this by being consistently excellent in visible ways, by building alliances with people whose opinions matter, and by addressing threats to your reputation quickly and strategically before they solidify into accepted narratives. Your reputation is both your armor and your currency in the game of power. Treat it accordingly. Type this in the comments. I build my reputation with every action, and I protect it strategically. The sixth principle is understanding when to be bold and when to be patient. Timing is everything in power dynamics. Move too early and you expose yourself before you're ready. Move too late and the opportunity passes to someone more decisive. Machiavelli observed that fortune favors the bold, but only when boldness is paired with preparation and awareness. Most people err on the side of excessive caution. They wait for perfect conditions that never come. They delay action until they feel completely ready, which means they rarely act at all. Meanwhile, opportunities go to those who move with acceptable risk, who understand that waiting itself is often the biggest risk, but recklessness is just as dangerous as timidity. Boldness without preparation is just chaos. Moving without understanding the terrain gets you defeated quickly. The strategic mind knows the difference between calculated risk and foolish exposure. Here's how you develop this discernment. You prepare extensively in private, then act decisively in public. You study the situation until you understand the key variables. Then you move before others expect it. You build your capabilities quietly, then deploy them at the moment of maximum impact. When you see an opening, you take it. Not someday, not when it feels comfortable. Now, while others are still deliberating. But you only see these openings clearly because you've been watching, learning, and positioning yourself in advance. Your boldness looks like luck to outsiders, but you know it's the result of strategic patience followed by tactical speed. There's also a rhythm to this. Sometimes the right move is to wait and observe while others exhaust themselves. Sometimes it's to strike immediately while confusion creates opportunity. The key is staying alert to which moment you're in and having the discipline to match your action to the timing. Practice this by taking smaller calculated risks regularly. Speak up in a meeting when you normally wouldn't. Make a proposal before you feel completely ready. Reach out to someone you've been hesitating to contact. Each small act of strategic boldness builds your capacity for larger ones. And each time you act and survive, you gather data that makes your next decision more informed. The world rewards those who move intelligently, not those who wait for permission. Type this in the comments. I move with bold precision when others hesitate. The seventh and final principle is this: you must build power from multiple sources, never just one. Machiavelli warned against depending on the strength of others or on a single pillar of influence. Because when that pillar falls, everything collapses. Look at your current life. Where does your power come from? If it's only from your job, you're vulnerable to economic shifts and office politics. If it's only from your relationship, you're vulnerable to that person's choices. If it's only from your reputation in one community, you're vulnerable to the shifting opinions of that group. True power is diversified. You build financial resources that give you independence. You develop skills that make you valuable in multiple contexts. You cultivate relationships across different domains. You strengthen your physical health so your body doesn't limit your ambition. You train your mind so you can think clearly under pressure. You create value in ways that aren't tied to any single institution or person. This takes years. It requires discipline when you'd rather relax. It means investing in yourself even when the returns aren't immediate. But the result is a kind of resilience that makes you nearly impossible to defeat. Because even if one area of your life collapses, you have 5 others holding you up. This is what Machiavelli meant when he talked about the prince who relies on his own arms versus the prince who relies on mercenaries. The one who builds their own capabilities can't be betrayed by them. The one who depends entirely on others is always one decision away from ruin. Start building your foundation today. What's one skill you could develop? What's one relationship you could deepen? What's one source of income you could create? What's one aspect of your health you could improve? You don't have to do everything at once, but you do have to start, and you have to be consistent. Over time, these investments compound. Your options expand. Your confidence grows because it's based on real capability, not just positive thinking. And your power becomes something that can't be taken away by any single event or person. Type this in the comments. I build unshakable power from multiple foundations. Now you understand the core principles. People operate from self-interest. Emotional control is power. Silence and mystery protect you. Leverage comes from options. Reputation shapes reality. Timing determines outcomes, and diversified strength makes you unbreakable. But understanding isn't enough. The question is whether you'll actually apply this, whether you'll start seeing the game clearly and making moves accordingly, whether you'll stop being naive and start being strategic. Nothing can defeat you once you see the game, because you'll finally understand what's actually happening beneath the surface of every interaction. You'll read people's incentives instead of just their words. You'll control your reactions instead of being controlled by them. You'll build leverage instead of living in dependence. You'll manage your reputation instead of leaving it to chance. You'll move with bold timing instead of waiting forever. And you'll construct power from so many sources that no single loss can break you. This is how you become formidable without being loud, dangerous without being aggressive, powerful without needing to prove it. The world is already playing this game. The only question is whether you're going to keep pretending it doesn't exist, or whether you're going to learn the rules and play to win. If this resonated with you, if you're ready to see reality clearly and move accordingly, hit the like button. Subscribe for more insights on power, strategy, and the psychology of influence. Share this with someone who needs to wake up, and drop this final affirmation in the comments. I see the game clearly and nothing can defeat me now. Your transformation doesn't start when the world becomes fair. It starts when you accept that it never will be, and you build power anyway.